Andy, we know about your love for the Detroit Lions, which means it's accompanied with hatred for the Green Bay Packers. But now that this individual is a New York Jet, where do you fall in on this Jimmy Kimmel, Aaron Rodgers spat? Do you even care?
So, I mean, at one level, I don't care, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is kind of a douche, right? And so his being annoying goes beyond being a Green Bay Packer, right? There's like I don't like the current Green Bay Packers because I have to hate the Packers, but I actually like what Jordan Love is doing there. I like seeing them succeed. I hope they beat the Cowboys this weekend. But Aaron Rodgers was, is one of those guys who, fantastic player on the field, but just consistently a jerk. And his most recent, nonsense with Jimmy Kimmel and his sort of lousy response, it sort of solidifies the fact that the guy's a douche, at least publicly. He might be a wonderful man in the privacy of his own home. Publicly, he presents himself as a complete jerk.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that line of like I really don't care, but
Yeah,
the only thing I that bothers me is you don't just accuse somebody of being a pedophile
yeah,
with
yeah,
that. Like that's a really dick move.
yeah,
I mean, look, I know Jimmy Kimmel is a comedian. He's taken a lot of shots at Aaron Rodgers over his stance on a lot of different things, but that's fair game. I think when you start accusing somebody of being that level without any sort of real
yeah.
like supporting evidence, I think that's a really dick move.
Yeah, you can make fun of the guy's ability, his comedic value, his hair, his performance, whatever. Like that's one thing. But when you start making allegations of, being a pedophile or, other criminal activity, that's a
Yeah.
different sort of attack. That's, not it's not funny. It's not cool.
Yeah, it's not. It's I thought even like Pat McAfee even took like a really like he even took like I'm not a huge fan of his. I think he's
Yeah,
fun and kind of be goofy, but he even in his like apology wasn't really an apology. It was kind of like, yeah, we're sorry we got in the middle of it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
like, dude, you come on. I mean, you opened the door for this. So, anyways, I don't want to dwell on that too much longer, Andy. A lot of sports. We got a lot of politics to talk into. I do want to. So let's start with politics, Andy.
All right.
A couple of stories have come across the last couple of days. One, Iowa is heating up in frigid temperatures. I don't know how the weather was like for you yesterday, but Iowa got almost a foot of snow.
Yeah.
It's going to stay cold there for at least through the caucuses. It was windy and rainy here. We had a tornado in Charlotte, but in Iowa, that could be a real big impact to the caucus that comes out. I think we've pretty well settled. It's going to be, obviously Trump's at first, and then somewhere Nikki and DeSantis are 2 and 3. I think it just looks continued worse for DeSantis. He probably won't drop out after Iowa, but he's probably not got much left after New Hampshire. But Nikki is closing the gap in New Hampshire. It's now under single digits between her and Trump. Again, I think we both said we don't expect her to win there, but closing this gap is pretty big momentum for them. You don't need to win Iowa and New Hampshire, but you can certainly lose if you don't come in place at Iowa and New Hampshire. What do you think about this latest development, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, this is where Iowa is so weird. I mean, one, before I use the word weird, I'm talking about the caucus itself. Iowa as a state, one, future birthplace to Captain James T. Kirk, who in just 224 years, actually 204 years, will be born in the great state of Iowa. So they're great alone for that reason. Two, I've been out there running there, eating barbecue there. Beautiful state, wonderful people, great dead pig. So no issues with Iowa as a state. The caucuses are just weird though, right? Because
Yeah.
they're weird events in so many ways. But at the end of the day, because of the weather, because of those different variables, Iowa always comes down to, organization, right? And on the ground. And can you get people to show up and be in the right place at the right time? And then the operations inside the caucus, as people shuffle around, it's a lot more than just people showing up and voting. So this is where, I mean, DeSantis has been there for a long time doing well. I think of the three leading candidates, he's got the most opportunity to surpass expectations, I think, because there's been so much negative towards him throughout his campaign, right? Everything's just been from announcing and being the apparent heir to getting just pooped on by everybody, right? So he's got a chance to surpass expectations. I don't know if he's going to do it. And for all of Nikki Haley's surge, I don't know if she's got the operation on the ground to execute to live up to her expectations at this point because they are increasing, right? And at the same time, President Trump is sort of increasing his own expectations, sort of talking about how successful he's going to be, and that's a dangerous game too because except for Trump's supporters, everybody else wants to say how he stumbled in Iowa, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, and you just never know, right? If an unexpected snowstorm moves in, if some other weird variables change how things go, it really comes down to, do you have the buses? Do you get people where they need to go? That weird ground operation. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But the polls are, there's going to be some differences between execution and the polls.
Yeah, and then you go from Iowa, where you really need that interesting, the ground operation as you described, and then you go to New Hampshire, where it's more like, while it's not obviously the biggest state, and it has very low electoral college votes. Again, not performing well there can have an impact as you go into the other races. I mean, I remember, Marco Rubio was in third place in Iowa in 2016 and had a really good showing. He got a lot of buzz, then went to New Hampshire and just got trounced. I mean, I think Chris Christie just obliterated him on the debate stage, and he never recovered. Seventh place, and I don't think we've heard from Marco Rubio since then. Little Marco, I guess, as Trump would call him. But I think there's a lot of, if Nikki Haley can build upon this, and really I think it comes down to, can you get the one-on-one with, like, Trump against the field is pretty big. Like, I mean, he's got a lot of targets to go after, but Trump one-on-one, that's a little bit different story.
Yeah.
And I think for the Republicans, if they can get to a one-on-one matchup sooner rather than later and not have this drag on, I mean, for all intents and purposes, VR and Chris Christie, they're afterthoughts. It's really down between, does DeSantis leave after New Hampshire, or does he somehow have some sort of miraculous comeback and show stronger and gain some momentum there? So it would be interesting to see. Any thoughts on the Republican side? And then we'll flip to the Democrats here, Andy.
I think it's like you said, it's really going to come down to what happens. I mean, everything changes after those two, regardless of what people think of the individual states or their primary and caucus. Things change because donations dry up for those that don't succeed. If somebody stumbles really badly, it really does put a damper on their ability to come back and rebound successfully. Although some people do. Joe Biden did, right? Joe Biden didn't do great in those two, came back strong in South Carolina and ran away with Democratic nomination. So you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But certainly if somebody does really badly or exceeds expectations by a significant amount, I mean, Nikki Haley's only, I think, 7% behind Trump in the New Hampshire poll, with about 25% of the votes going to other candidates. If she does really well in Iowa, there could be some momentum that changes things. And, again, with all of Mr. Trump's ongoing legal issues right now on top of all of this, that could lower some of his support and increase some of hers. If she closes within just a couple of points, like, that's a really big story. So it was, from a observer standpoint, it's going to be really interesting to watch what happens these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it definitely will be. Where do you come down on the Trump immunity case for this whole thing?
Yeah, I don't think an ex-president is immune from anything.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'm pretty much
They're
aligned.
citizens. Yeah, they're public. They're citizens again. That's the whole idea of I hate I hate the fact that we call former public officials by their former elected office. Like, I hate that we
Yeah,
call presidents and governors and senators that are no longer in those roles president, governor, and senator. Right? Our Constitution prohibits the use of titles of nobility, which essentially those are. Right? So once you leave the White House, you're Barack Obama, you're Donald Trump, you're Joe Biden, you're private effing citizen again, right? You're PFC Joe, right? So you don't have immunity, you don't have special powers, you don't have you're just a citizen again. Get back to work and do your job. And if you got legal trouble, you got legal trouble. So I
yeah.
don't, I think Mr. Trump is reaching at best. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, I'm not a Supreme Court justice, but yeah, I think that the case is full of shit.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Okay, so let's flip to the Democrat side, Andy. as much as when you have an incumbent president, you often don't have many challengers to that side. This is, I wouldn't say it's unusual because there are usually a handful of people who do try to challenge the incumbent. Um, for the Democrats, they're in a weird spot. We've talked about this before. Joe Biden is old, and we're not trying to be ageist or against the elderly in any way, shape, or form. He is the oldest president. He will continue, whoever is, if it's Trump or Biden, hopefully it's not either one of them. But if they are, they will be the oldest president in history. Biden is clearly slowed down on a lot of fronts. We can say the same about other candidates as well, but that we're talking Democrats here. And so, with that as the baseline, we have two Democratic candidates who are in New Hampshire trying to make a name for themselves. They're there. Biden is not. They've Biden is effectively written off. I don't even think he's on the ballot in New Hampshire,
Right.
and you have reports of Politico saying that these two individuals, Dean Phillips and Williamson, I think it's Williamson, they debated in front of seventh graders. I think it was a little misleading clickbait title,
Yeah.
headline, but that's what you get sometimes in this reporting stage we're in. What do you think on the Democratic side? Where are we at here?
Yeah, well, I mean, one, Biden's name isn't on the ballot. They're writing his name in if you want to vote for Joe Biden in New Hampshire, right? And that there's a background to that that's not not relevant now. But then you do have two other candidates that are competing, and they're interesting candidates. Say what you will about Marianne Williamson. She's running for the second time. She's a I think self-proclaimed spiritual guru. She's famous from her publicity with Oprah Winfrey, and she's written books and been out of the public. It sounds like she's a maniac to work for. There have been some pretty strong allegations, for her leadership style. But what she is promoting, interesting ideas that are different than everybody else, right? She comes from a different point of view. She's not a politician by background. It brings a different voice, which in the primaries and campaigns, you want to hear those things, right? You want to hear those other voices. And the Democrats have really squashed her and ignored her. Same thing with Dean Phillips, who, Dave, I've got to say, Dean Phillips, besides being a Gen X guy, kind of looks like he could be a Pounder cousin. He's kind of got a little Pounder-esque look going there. But he's same thing there. He announced his candidacy largely, I think, to get his name out there, right? Looking at the future and being known and being able to run again. But at I think 54 years old, right? The guy is a voice of a younger generation. And the fact that Democrats are completely ignoring that at a time when people are saying we don't want Joe Biden, I don't know that ignoring other candidates is the right move. And USA Today had a title that talked about Biden skipping this debate as bringing on Trump vibes, right? The same way that Trump has ignored his Republican opponents, Joe Biden's ignoring his Democratic opponents. It's an arrogant thing to do. It's dismissive, and it's sort of disrespectful to the democratic process, in my opinion. So while there's only about 200 folks in attendance, and neither one of those two candidates is going to get any serious votes, comparable to Mr. Biden. The fact that the two parties, managed to ignore their competitors, when they've got an incumbent in the White House, is just a sort of sad reality of our democracy, because we should be hearing from other candidates. They may have ideas that are relevant and interesting. And we've seen some successful challenges. I think back to like Pat Buchanan, right? Like him or not, he challenged the incumbent and brought issues up that were worth debating, worth discussing, because he represented Americans' points of views that needed to be heard. And same thing, Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips have a voice that is representative of some population of Democratic voters. They should be heard, and that can help Joe Biden be a better candidate. Instead, they're being ignored. That's not good for democracy. It's not good for the Democratic Party. It's kind of sad to see.
Yeah, actually, I think this is going to wind up backfiring on the Democrats. I think this is an opportunity here where, I mean, who's on their bench? We don't know because they're not getting any publicity. They're not getting any sort of notoriety. This is a good time to start having some of these people start rising up and at least making a name for themselves in some form or fashion. It's non-existent, and you have Joe Biden who proclaimed that the reason why he ran in the first place was to pull away from Trump and to get us back. He was going to be a bridge. Everyone expected him to be one party candidate or one term candidate or elector or president, and here we are, and now they're stuck. And
Yeah.
even if they win this election, the Democrats, I think they're in really bad shape, and I don't think it's going to be a good opportunity for them. So I think, maybe a short-term win, but a long-term loss for them. So we'll see how that plays out. Anything else on the politics side, Andy? Anything you want to hit before we move topics?
Dave, I want to move.
You want to move? Oh man, that is good. That is, you
Hot.
can really getting hot. And that is true. Okay, Andy, let's move to a little bit of sports. We talked on Monday about what the over/under for coach firings was going to be. I think I said six. Is that what it?
You did. I think you nailed it so far. I think I was taking the under, and I've already missed. I think it is up to 6.
Yeah, it's up there. And the most surprising one I think was yesterday in Tennessee. Mike Vrabel was fired,
Yeah.
and he was a pretty successful coach. I think he's been there 6 or 7 years. The first several of them, he was pretty made a good run at it. I think he was responsible for what people would say is the end of the Patriots dynasty by going into Foxborough and beating the Patriots on the road, and what was Tom Brady's last game as a Patriot. Is had a I mean, they didn't really challenge ever for the crown of anything, but they were pretty good, and the last 2 years were really bad. They didn't really have much of a quarterback option. They've drafted two quarterbacks, and Malik Willis, who's I don't even know if he's on the roster anymore, and then Will Levis, who had some sparks, but he's also got questions about whether he's durable in the long term. Derrick Henry, their great, probably future Hall of Famer rushing or rusher, is probably going to be gone. They're in a weird state of transition. So instead of trying to trade their quarterback, which seems to be or their coach, which seems to be a popular move, they fired him. I spent too much time talking about Tennessee, Andy. But this brings up, one of the coaches is still out there, Bill Belichick. Not sure where he's going to be going. I think they'll find some decision tomorrow. I think they're meeting on a couple different things. But Mike Vrabel, former Patriot coach, has a lot of connections there. It might be something that now opens up for people. Could go to the Commanders. Could go a lot of different places. You
Yeah.
also have Josh McDaniels out there, Andy, and there's a report yesterday that you shared in which maybe there's a reunion in place between Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. Nothing would make me happier, Andy,
I
than
agree.
for the Patriots to continue to try to live their former selves and continue to go down. That franchise is a mess. It's not very good, and I'm not sure you can save it. And I'm not sure I give a fuck because I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy about that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
thoughts?
I like all of that, Dave. So I mean, let me start with the Patriots because that's easy. So yeah, Bill Belichick he had some comments to the media, and he kind of hunkered down a little bit. He basically said, I'm under contract. Kind of challenged Robert Kraft to basically fire me or keep me. Like those are your options, and if you're not going to pull the trigger, I'm going to drive on because I'm under contract. The idea of bringing Josh McDaniel back. I mean, look, that guy is a failure of a head coach. And again, maybe a super nice guy, and I don't know him, and I'm not judging
Two-time
that
failure,
person.
Andy.
But as a coach, he's done terrible. And so his brother, Matt Patricia, who tried to destroy the Detroit Lions and is effectively destroying the Philadelphia Eagles. Those guys suck as head coaches. I would love for them to go back to New England and fail again under Papa Belichick's, loving watch. He's brought them both back before, and he can let him bring them back one more time and keep that franchise in complete disarray. We'll see. With Vrabel, with Belichick, the idea of trading coaches, nobody wants to do that, right? For coaches, they don't want to be traded because that takes away draft picks from the teams
Right.
they're going to. That hurts them. So this might have been a firing that was sort of like Vrabel saying he wants to go, or and the reality is he's getting a lot of positive talk, but he really didn't do anything productive in Tennessee. They were a 1 seed that everybody knew was a dud. They got crushed early on. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. They have not been a successful team. They had a great running back in Derrick Henry, much like the Detroit Lions had Barry Sanders, not as good as Barry Sanders, but didn't get anything done, just kind of, ran that guy to the ground. He's gone. So maybe it makes sense to clear house, get rid of the coach. They seem to like their GM. There seemed to have been competition there between, Vrabel and the GM. Maybe it's time to just clear house. I don't know that Vrabel is a superstar head coaching pick for another team. He'll land a job, but I don't know that he's really bringing great dynamic credentials to it. I wasn't impressed with what he did in Tennessee, nor his, I'm taking a crap on the sideline squat stance that he was constantly in. None of that was particularly impressive. So we'll see. And as far as New England goes, I mean, please hire Matt Patricia back, keep Belichick. I would love to see that fail. Now, there's been a lot of talk of Belichick going to the Chargers, the Panthers, Washington. Everybody's claiming Bill Belichick. And I don't know. Pete Carroll's still coaching strong in his 70s. Done a good job in Seattle. Maybe Belichick will do well with a new chance, a new environment. I don't particularly know. I don't particularly care. Not a big fan of either one of those coaches, but really love the Josh McDaniel, Matt Patricia going back to New England idea. It's just it's perfect. Perfect.
Nice, nice. Yeah, where do you fall in on head coaches like getting personnel decisions and the rights there to do that? It seems to be like, look, if you're running a business, you want to have hiring decisions as well as executing. So, but coaches seem to get shit on because they have too much power in doing that. Now, look, Bill Belichick hasn't been a great drafter in the last several years, but I mean, look, that's hard, right? I mean, I think many employers would say, yeah, I thought this guy was great in the hiring, the interview, but turned out to be a dud. I don't know. I mean, where do you fall on that line? Because that seems to be a contentious issue with Belichick.
Yeah.
Is he going to want to go somewhere where he doesn't have decision-making authority on personnel?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of NFL coaches are prima donnas, right? They've got huge egos. They think they can do everything. And of course, they want as much power and control as they can have. But those are two distinct jobs. And if you're doing both, you're probably not doing either one as well as you could, right? So, I mean, an organization, I'll go to Detroit as a good example. Detroit was in disarray for many years. They brought in an incredible GM in Brad Holmes and a very good coach in Dan Campbell who worked together, right, to select personnel. Now Brad's got the final decision, but they're doing it as a team. Dan Campbell coaches the team. Brad Holmes manages the personnel. That allows them to look, near term and long term in different ways and work together, right, to bring success to the organization. And it's been so far excellent drafts, excellent trades for Detroit. I think it's a good story. When you've got one guy trying to do both, it's a lot of work that you can't necessarily do as well and successfully. The coach likes the idea of it, but they're probably not doing as good a job as they would be if they're full-time focused on coaching and they had somebody really leading the GM job and position. I think they're different jobs. I think they should be two different people. I think that's right. I think the challenge is you've got a guy with a huge ego that thinks he's right about everything. Can you find a coach and a GM that can work together? For Vrabel, didn't seem to work well in Tennessee. They didn't get along. They've had terrible drafts. It's been a lousy football team. For Belichick, look, they had a run of remarkable players, and at a time when, just like with the Chiefs today, everybody that was leaving a team, it was like, hey, just put them on the Patriots. Today, it's just let them join the Chiefs, right? Derrick Henry, let him play for the Chiefs, right? Let him win a Super Bowl. It was the same thing in New England. They had a core team with Gronk, with Brady, with Amendola that other players just came to and continued success. How much of that was Belichick? Still a big question mark, right? Still a question mark. It was really a great combination of people and talent. I don't know that Belichick's a great GM. I don't even know that he's a great coach. I would not give him that job if I was, an owner.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is an interesting debate. Obviously, there's the record with Brady, and then there's record without Brady. I mean, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, he played in a great environment.
By some definitions, Joe Montana remains the greatest quarterback of all time, David.
It's hard to compare quarterbacks in different eras, right? I mean, I think Joe Montana, when you were getting body slammed and concussed on a day-to-day basis versus quarterbacks who can't even get tapped on anymore. I mean, I think there is a different environment. Wide receivers used to be able to go across the middle and get obliterated. Now they can run free will almost everywhere without or a penalty gets called. So in different eras for sure. This will be a hot debate. Obviously, Patriot haters will always question that. Then there's the other people who say 6 Super Bowls is still 6 Super Bowls. So it's tough. So anyways, Andy, I know that's a lot to get into on a Wednesday, Politics Wednesday. We did cover some sports. I'm excited about next week, Andy. It's going to be a lot of caucus stuff. So we'll probably be hitting that hot and heavy. It'll be interesting to see the instant reactions from from Iowa, and we also will have the playoffs. But we still have one more episode this week, Andy. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you on Friday then.
Yeah, same, Dave. It's gonna be fun for football and politics, two brutal sports. So we'll see where it all goes.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Andy. Until next time, we'll catch up with you later.